Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. You guys have sent in some seriously interesting stuff on innovation this time around. Articles, research, even personal notes. Looks like you're all ready to get into it.
I love it.
Yeah. And we are going to focus on this text called 10 Truths About Innovation.
Oh, interesting.
But instead of thinking of it as like a set of rules,
Yeah.
hard and fast, we're going to treat it more like a guidebook,
Yeah, I like
a
that.
starting point for our conversation.
That's a great way to look at it. Lets us, dissect these so-called truths.
Exactly.
Explore the nuances and see how they actually play out in the real world.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
let's dive right in.
Okay.
So the first truth tackles the very definition of innovation.
Okay.
And it says, innovation isn't just about brainstorming cool ideas.
Right.
It's about creating something useful for users.
Yeah, that's a crucial distinction. I mean, we've all seen those flashy inventions that, grab headlines, but they never really solve a real problem or gain traction in the market.
Totally.
True innovation has to be grounded in a deep understanding of user needs, user challenges. So you really have to understand what people are struggling with.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting because they compare innovation to a good story.
Okay.
And I mean, we all love a good story.
Yeah.
But how does that apply to something like product development or business strategy?
Well, think about it. A compelling story grabs your attention, right? Makes you care about the characters, and it stays with you long after you finish reading it or watching it.
Oh, for sure.
Same principle applies to innovation. If you can frame your idea as a story that resonates with people,
Yeah.
that highlights the problem that you're solving and the positive impact it will have, you're much more likely to get buy-in
Yeah.
from investors, customers, even your own team.
Okay, so it's not just about the features and benefits, but it's about creating a narrative
Exactly.
that people can connect with emotionally.
Exactly.
Okay, I can see how that would be powerful.
It is. And they go on to talk about the importance of letting go of the past.
Okay.
They have this image of a heavy backpack
Oh, interesting.
full of outdated practices, beliefs weighing you down. It's a pretty vivid analogy, isn't it?
It is, but I mean, honestly, I can also see the other side. Isn't there value in tradition and established practices? I mean, sometimes those things work for a reason.
Absolutely. We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say. But the key is to be discerning,
Yeah.
to constantly evaluate, what's still serving us well and what's become baggage.
Yeah,
It's holding us back.
that makes sense.
In a rapidly changing world, clinging too tightly to the past can really make us slow and inflexible.
Totally.
And it's about finding that balance between respecting what's worked before, but being open to new ways of doing things.
So it's more about adaptability
Exactly.
than completely abandoning the past.
Right. It's about recognizing that what worked yesterday might not work today and being willing to evolve, to adapt, to stay ahead of the curve.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the second truth they highlight is the role of creativity in innovation.
Mm-hmm.
And they describe it as the fuel.
Uh-huh.
But they emphasize that it needs to be balanced with disciplined execution.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that balance so crucial?
It's like, having a powerful engine without a steering wheel.
Okay.
Creativity is essential for generating new ideas, but without a structured approach to refining, testing, and implementing those ideas, they're likely to remain just that, ideas.
So it's not enough to just have a brainstorming session.
Right.
Come up with a bunch of cool concepts.
There's this great quote from Charles Dickens that the text highlights.
Okay.
An idea, like a ghost, must be spoken to a little before it will explain itself. I think that captures it perfectly, right?
Yeah.
We have to bring those ideas out into the open, articulate them, and start shaping them into something tangible.
So talking about them is key then.
Absolutely. When we share our ideas, we invite feedback, collaboration, different perspectives, and that can help us refine and strengthen them. Think about it. Have you ever had an idea that seemed brilliant in your head?
Oh, yeah.
But then when you try to explain it to someone else, it kind of falls apart.
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
And usually it's in that process of explaining it that I realize,
Yeah.
there's flaws in my thinking.
Exactly.
Or there are gaps.
And that's why this back and forth, this dialogue, is so essential to the innovation process.
Totally.
The text also points out that different people excel at different stages of the creative process.
Okay.
Some people are great at generating ideas, some are better at refining and analyzing them, and others excel at bringing them to life.
So building diverse teams with a mix of those skills is critical.
Absolutely. You need that blend of, the creative spark, analytical thinking, and practical execution to really turn a good idea into a successful innovation.
That leads perfectly into their third truth,
Okay.
which is all about the power of collaboration, especially when it comes to diversity in teams.
This is one of the, I think, most crucial aspects of innovation, If everyone on your team comes from the same background, shares the same perspectives, has the same experiences, you're going to get a very narrow range of ideas.
Right.
But when you bring together people with different thinking styles, different disciplines, different backgrounds, even cultural perspectives,
Yeah.
you create a much richer, more fertile ground for truly innovative solutions to emerge. Think about, a time you were working on a problem and felt really stuck.
Oh, all the time.
Getting a fresh perspective from someone with a different background help you see the problem in a new light.
Now that you mention it,
Yeah,
yes.
right.
Just last week, I was struggling with a design issue, and a colleague from a completely different department
Yeah.
offered a suggestion that I never would have considered.
Right.
But it ended up being the perfect solution.
It's amazing how often a fresh perspective can unlock those new possibilities. And the text emphasizes the importance of psychological safety in teams.
Yes.
This idea that people need to feel comfortable to challenge ideas, even the bosses.
So I get how diversity of thought is important,
Uh-huh.
but wouldn't too many differing opinions slow down the process?
Well, that's
Sometimes you just need decisive action.
Of course, speed and efficiency are important.
Yeah.
But if people are afraid to speak up, to disagree, to play devil's advocate, you risk creating an echo chamber
Yeah.
where bad ideas go unchallenged and potentially lead to costly mistakes.
So it's about finding that sweet spot
Exactly.
between healthy debate
Yeah,
and getting things done.
exactly. And it's the leader's responsibility to create an environment where people feel safe,
Yeah.
to express their opinions, challenge assumptions, and even make mistakes without fear of retribution.
It's so important.
The text even makes the point that sometimes the quietest person in the room has the most valuable insight.
That's such a good reminder.
So encouraging active listening
Yes.
and drawing out those voices is key.
Absolutely. It's so easy to overlook those quieter voices,
Right.
but they often have such a unique perspective
Yeah.
that can challenge our assumptions
Yeah.
and really spark those breakthroughs.
And sometimes those quieter voices might be harboring an insightful question
Yeah.
that can help refine or completely change the direction of an idea.
Absolutely. Okay, moving on to their fourth truth, which is about the connection between innovation and the business model.
Okay.
And they make this interesting point that it's a two-way street. Your business model can either help or hinder innovation. I've even seen companies where the existing structure,
Right.
the processes, even the way they measure success, actually stifle new ideas.
Absolutely. And I've seen that too, unfortunately.
Can you give an example of that?
Yeah, so imagine a company that built its success on selling, physical products through a traditional retail model.
Yeah.
They have these established supply chains, relationships with distributors, a whole infrastructure geared towards that way of doing business.
Okay.
Now, along comes this, disruptive technology that allows for direct-to-consumer sales online.
Okay.
If that company clings too tightly to its existing model, they might completely miss out on the opportunity,
Yeah,
while a more agile competitor seizes it.
that's a great example. So even a successful business model
Uh-huh.
can become a liability
Yes.
if it's not flexible enough
Right.
to adapt to change.
Exactly.
No.
And that actually leads to another point they make, which is sometimes the best environment for an idea to flourish is outside your existing organization.
That's a pretty radical concept.
That is,
I mean, you'd think a company would want to keep all its brilliant ideas in-house, right?
you would, but sometimes the existing structure, the culture, or even the company's core competencies just aren't the right fit for a particular innovation.
Mhm.
It might need a different approach, different resources, or even a different leadership style to truly thrive.
So sometimes it's better to let an idea go free, even if it means it develops outside the company.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that not all innovations fit neatly within the confines of the current structure. And sometimes you need to create a separate entity, a spin-off, or even an entirely new venture to allow an idea to reach its full potential.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
It really challenges that traditional view
Right.
of innovation as something that just happens within the walls of a company.
Exactly. Innovation doesn't follow a set path. It can emerge from unexpected places and require unconventional approaches to truly take flight.
And finally, they talk about thinking broadly about competition.
This is another crucial point. We tend to think of competition in terms of, companies that offer similar products or services.
Right.
But the reality is it's much more complex than that. It's about those unexpected forces that can disrupt entire industries. For example, a traditional taxi company might have focused on competing with other taxi services, but then along comes ride-sharing apps and completely changes the game.
Wow. So it's about looking beyond your immediate rivals.
Yes.
Understanding the broader trends.
Yeah.
And forces that could potentially disrupt your industry.
Exactly. And being prepared to adapt and innovate to stay ahead of those disruptions.
This has been an incredible deep dive into just these first 4 truths
I know, right?
about innovation. They've really challenged some of my assumptions and given me a lot to think about. What about you?
I'm with you. They've highlighted just how dynamic and multifaceted innovation truly is and how it impacts so much more than just product development.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's much more to uncover as we explore the rest of these truths. So stay tuned as we continue our deep dive into the world of innovation. Okay, so let's jump back into these 10 truths about innovation. The next one, truth number 5, is all about systematizing innovation. Feels kind of counterintuitive, right?
Yeah, how so?
Well, they're saying that as work becomes more efficient,
Uh-huh.
there's actually less room for spontaneous innovation.
That's a really interesting point, and it makes sense when you think about it. When we streamline processes and we really focus on maximizing efficiency, we're essentially optimizing for the current state.
Right.
That's great for predictability and short-term gains,
Sure.
but it can really squeeze out the space for experimentation, those happy accidents
Yeah.
that often lead to those big breakthroughs.
So how do we prevent that? How do we keep that space open?
Well, they suggest that intentional systems are key.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well, it's about recognizing that innovation doesn't just happen by chance. We need to create the conditions for
Yeah.
it to flourish.
Okay.
That means dedicating time and resources to exploring new ideas, encouraging experimentation, and building a culture that truly values risk-taking.
And they also make this point about, building an innovation culture.
Right.
How it's about more than just like running a brainstorming session every now and then.
Right.
Or having a suggestion box.
It's about weaving innovation into the fabric
Yeah.
of the organization, making it part of the daily conversation, the decision-making processes, the way teams are structured, even how performance is measured.
That sounds like a pretty big shift for a lot of companies.
It can be, but it's absolutely essential for long-term success, I think. The companies that really thrive in today's rapidly changing world are the ones that embrace innovation as a core value. It's not just a side project.
They also highlight the importance of having a clear process for handling new ideas.
Yeah, for sure.
I can see how that would be important. Otherwise, people get discouraged from sharing if they feel like their ideas are just, going into a black hole.
It's heartbreaking, isn't it?
Yeah.
Someone comes up with a brilliant idea, full of enthusiasm, only to see it get lost in the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
It's not only demoralizing for the individual, but it sends a message to the entire organization that innovation isn't truly valued.
Totally.
So, having those clear channels for submitting, evaluating, and potentially implementing new ideas is crucial.
Absolutely. And you've worked with a lot of companies on their innovation strategies. What are some common pitfalls that you see when it comes to managing that flow of ideas?
Well, one of the most common mistakes I see is having too many layers of approval
Okay.
or, overly complex evaluation criteria.
Yeah.
It just bogs down the process and it really kills the momentum. Another pitfall is a lack of transparency.
Oh, interesting.
People need to know what happens to their ideas,
Right.
even if they're not ultimately chosen for development. Otherwise, it just feels like their input is going into a void.
So transparency and clear communication are key.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate the power of feedback.
Yeah.
Even if an idea isn't, immediately actionable, a simple thank you for sharing or we appreciate your innovative thinking
Yeah.
can go a long way in fostering that culture of creativity.
Truth number 6 tackles something that I think a lot of us struggle with, which is our own assumptions and mental models.
Right.
And they're saying this is often the biggest barrier to innovation.
It's so true. We get stuck in our ways of thinking, right? That,
Yeah.
this is how we've always done it mentality.
Yeah.
And it can really blind us to those new possibilities.
I can relate to that for sure.
Yeah.
But how do we break out of those mental ruts?
Mm.
They talk about the importance of challenging the status quo, but that can be uncomfortable, right? Even scary for some people.
It can be, but think of it like exercise. If you want to build muscle, you have to push yourself beyond your comfort zone.
Yeah.
The same applies to innovation, I think. By challenging our assumptions, by questioning the way things are, we create the conditions for new ideas and solutions to emerge.
So it's about embracing that discomfort.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that growth and innovation often require us to step outside of our comfort zones and embrace a bit of uncertainty.
Now, they also talk about focusing on user challenges rather than just needs. What's the difference?
Okay, so needs are often surface level. They're what people tell you they want.
Okay.
But challenges dig deeper
Okay.
into those underlying motivations and frustrations that users experience.
Can you give me examples?
Sure. A user might say, hey, I need a faster internet connection.
Yeah.
But if you probe further, you might discover that the real challenge is they're frustrated with, lag during video calls, which impacts their ability to connect with loved ones or be productive at work.
So the challenge is kind of like the root cause
That's
of the
exactly.
need.
And by understanding the challenge, you're in a much better position to develop innovative solutions that truly meet the user's needs.
How do we get better at identifying those deeper challenges?
It's about moving beyond just surveys and focus groups, right? It's about actually spending time observing users in their natural environment, asking open-ended questions, and truly listening to their stories. The more we understand the why behind their actions and frustrations, the better equipped we'll be to come up with solutions that make a real difference.
Makes sense.
Mm.
All right, let's move on to truth number 7, which is all about innovation as strategy.
Okay.
And this is really where innovation moves beyond just a cool idea or a clever invention, and it becomes a core driver of business success.
Right.
And I make this point about needing alignment between innovation efforts and the organization's overall strategy.
For sure.
Otherwise, it's just a distraction.
Yeah, you got to have that big picture in mind.
And they have this really intriguing statement. Strategic success lies in surprise.
It does, doesn't it? In a competitive landscape, the ability to surprise your rivals, disrupt expectations, and offer something genuinely new can give you a significant edge. Think about the first iPhone. It wasn't just like a slightly better cell phone. It was a complete reimagining of what a mobile device could be, and it took the market by storm.
Yeah.
That element of surprise is key to creating that kind of impact.
I mean, that's a great example. But how can businesses use innovation to create that element of surprise and, to stay ahead of the curve?
It requires a commitment to continuous learning, experimentation, and a willingness to embrace calculated risks, right?
Okay.
It also means being really attuned to emerging trends, technologies, and customer needs, and being able to kind of connect the dots in ways that others haven't.
They also bring up a point that can be really tough for organizations to swallow, which is strategic decisions are about more than just go.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're about stop or pause.
It's so true. And yet, it's one of the hardest things for many companies to do. We get attached to our projects, our products, even our business units,
Sure.
And it's so much easier to just keep doing what we've always done, even if it's not working as well as it used to, than to admit that maybe it's time to change course.
So it's about recognizing when to cut your losses.
Yes.
And redirect resources.
Exactly. Sometimes the most strategic decision you can make is to say stop to something that's no longer serving you well. It's about letting go of the past, as we discussed earlier, and creating that space for those new possibilities.
And that ties back to the idea of the heavy backpack, too.
Exactly.
Sometimes we need to unload some of that baggage to be able to move forward effectively.
It's about being strategic with our resources, our time, our energy, and really focusing on the areas that have the most potential for growth and innovation.
Okay, moving on to truth number 8. We're getting into the power of culture. And the text has this famous saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Powerful statement. Really highlights just how important it is to foster a culture that really supports and encourages innovation,
It's not enough to just have a brilliant strategy document just sitting on a shelf, right?
Exactly. If the organizational culture is resistant to change, risk-taking and collaboration, even the most brilliant strategy is likely to fail.
So what are some of the, hallmarks of a strong innovation culture?
Well, one of the key elements is psychological safety, which we already touched on. People need to feel comfortable sharing ideas, experimenting, and even making mistakes without fear of retribution.
Right.
Another important factor is a tolerance for ambiguity.
Okay.
And a willingness to embrace uncertainty.
Yeah.
Innovation is inherently messy and unpredictable. So a culture that values Control and predictability, above all else, is going to stifle creativity.
And the text calls out leaders specifically
Yeah.
as playing a crucial role in shaping that culture.
Yeah.
What can leaders do?
Well, they can start by modeling the behaviors that they want to see in others. Things like asking questions, actively listening, being open to new ideas, and even admitting when they don't have all the answers.
Uh-huh.
It's about creating that culture of continuous learning and curiosity.
So it's about leading by example.
Absolutely. It's about showing your team that it's okay to take risks, to experiment, and even to fail as long as they learn from those experiences.
Truth number 9 focuses specifically on leadership for innovation.
Okay.
And they point out that different leadership styles are needed at different stages of the innovation process. Can you give us some examples?
Yeah, in the early stages, when you're generating ideas and exploring possibilities, a more visionary and collaborative leadership style is often very effective.
Okay.
Someone who can really inspire and motivate, encourage out-of-the-box thinking, and create that sense of shared purpose.
What about when you move kind of from those early ideas into that execution phase?
Well, as you move into implementation, you might need a more structured and results-oriented leadership style.
Okay.
Someone who can provide clear direction, manage resources effectively, and hold teams accountable for delivering on those milestones.
Got it.
And of course, strong communication skills, transparency, and a willingness to adapt are essential leadership qualities throughout the entire process.
The text also talks about the tension that leaders face.
Yeah.
Balancing those short-term needs with those long-term innovation goals.
Mm-hmm.
Any advice on navigating that kind of tricky terrain?
It's a constant juggling act, and there's really no easy answer. On one hand, you have to meet immediate business demands, deliver on existing commitments, and basically keep the lights on.
Right.
On the other hand, you need to be investing in the future, exploring those new opportunities, and developing innovations that will ensure long-term growth and sustainability.
That makes sense, but how do you balance those competing demands in a practical way?
It requires clear communication, prioritization, and a willingness to make those tough choices. It also means building a culture that understands the importance of both. Delivering on today's needs while simultaneously laying the groundwork for tomorrow's success.
And finally, they talk about the importance of finding and nurturing what they call non-traditional talent. Why is this so crucial for driving innovation?
Well, traditional hiring practices often prioritize conformity and adherence to those established norms.
Right.
But true innovation often comes from those who think differently, challenge assumptions, and aren't afraid to kind of go against the grain.
So we need to look beyond those usual resumes and credentials.
Exactly. It might mean seeking out individuals with diverse backgrounds, experiences, or even unconventional career paths. It's about valuing creativity, critical thinking, and a passion for problem solving, even if it doesn't come packaged in the traditional way.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground.
I know, right?
It's amazing how all these truths kind of build on each other
Yeah.
and connect all these different aspects of innovation.
It really highlights how multifaceted innovation is. It's not just about coming up with that brilliant idea. It's about creating the right environment, the right culture, and having the right leadership to bring those ideas to life.
Absolutely. We've explored the importance of systems and processes, the power of culture, and the critical role of leadership. And we've seen how challenging our own assumptions and embracing discomfort can actually lead to breakthroughs. Ready to dive into that final truth?
Let's do it.
Okay, so we are on to the 10th and final truth from 10 Truths About Innovation. This one is all about openness. And it seems like it could be a little tricky.
It is. It is a bit nuanced. They're not saying you need to share all your company secrets with the world.
Right.
It's more about an attitude, I think, an attitude of collaboration and learning.
Okay.
Being receptive to new ideas, new perspectives, and new ways of doing things, while also being mindful of things like confidentiality, protecting your intellectual property, and just using good judgment when you're handling sensitive information.
So how does that play out in a real-world setting?
Well, let's say you're working on, a new product development.
Okay.
Being open might mean seeking out insights from customers, from experts in different fields, even from potential competitors. It could involve collaborating with, universities or research institutions to tap into that cutting-edge knowledge. It's about recognizing that you don't have all the answers.
Right.
And that those valuable insights can come from some pretty unexpected sources.
And they highlight that natural human tendency to communicate and how much we can learn by just, listening to conversations, asking questions, engaging in dialogue. all of that hinges on this foundation of openness.
Think about a time you had, just a casual conversation with someone from a completely different field or background.
Yeah.
Did you walk away with a fresh perspective or, learn something new that you could then apply to your own work?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, just last week I was chatting with a friend who's a musician,
Oh, cool.
and they were talking about the creative process.
Yeah.
And it just sparked all these ideas for how I could approach this project that I'm working on.
I love those moments, those cross-pollination moments. They can be so valuable. And the text actually connects this to two, I think, key traits of the innovator.
Good.
Curiosity and openness. Curiosity drives the desire to learn and discover new things, while openness allows for challenging kind of existing knowledge and exploring new thought patterns.
Yeah, I love that connection. And they also point out the importance of something called omvärldsbevakning.
Yes, that's a great word, isn't it?
It is.
It's a Swedish term that translates to worldview monitoring.
Okay.
Essentially, it's about staying informed about trends, new technologies, and developments happening in the wider world. It's like having your finger on the pulse of what's happening, which is, I think, crucial for identifying those potential opportunities and threats, and for making sure that your innovation efforts are aligned with that evolving landscape.
So, reading industry publications, attending conferences, even just paying attention to, like, what's trending on social media, that can all be valuable forms of omvärldsbevakning.
Absolutely. It's about being a lifelong learner and staying curious about the world around you. You just never know where that next big idea or disruption is going to come from.
Right.
So it's important to keep your eyes and ears open.
Now, they do acknowledge that there's a potential downside to this openness, right? Specifically, the risk of, having your ideas stolen or your intellectual property infringed upon.
Yeah, that's a valid concern. And it's something that any organization that's engaging in, open innovation needs to address.
Yeah.
There's this tension between the benefits of open collaboration and the need to protect, what's valuable, that intellectual property.
So how do you recommend companies kind of navigate that tension? How do they strike that right balance between openness and protection?
Well, it requires a strategic approach. In some cases, it might involve using non-disclosure agreements, patents, or other legal mechanisms to safeguard that intellectual property.
Yeah.
But at the same time, fostering a culture of trust and mutual respect, within those collaborative partnerships is really essential. It's about finding ways to share information and ideas openly while still protecting those core assets and ensuring that everyone benefits fairly from the collaboration.
Well, there you have it. We've explored all 10 truths
We did it.
about innovation from this text. It's been a really thought-provoking journey.
It has been.
What kind of stands out to you the most from all these truths?
I think for me, it's just how holistic their view of innovation is. It's not just about, brainstorming cool gadgets. It touches every aspect of a business, from, like you said, strategy and operations to culture and leadership.
Absolutely. And they give us such a practical framework
Yeah.
for thinking about how to foster a more innovative culture, how to build more effective teams, and how to lead in a way that really empowers people to think differently and challenge the status quo.
I agree. And it's a great reminder that innovation is not a one-time event. It's not a department. It's a mindset. It's a way of operating, and it needs to be embedded in the DNA of an organization if it's going to truly thrive in today's rapidly changing world.
It's been a pleasure diving into this with you.
Likewise. I always learn something new from these deep dives.
Me too. And I always love hearing from our listeners.
Yes.
So if this conversation sparked any thoughts or questions for you, please share them with us. You can find us on our website or connect with us on social media.
Remember, innovation is a journey, not a destination. Keep experimenting, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive. We'll catch you next time.